Yo, Animatormon here, with a review of the 2003 cartoon Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Now let's start with the overviews of each season. Season 1. Here we're introduced to the main players for most of the show. In the first episode we're introduced to the Turtles and Splinter, as well as Hun and the Purple Dragons. The first season is mostly about discovery. The show starts with them knowing very little about the outside world. They discover this foreign world as well as its inhabitants. They're introduced to their main allies and enemies, which will last throughout most of the series. As the season continues, the Turtles become more and more involved in the plots of their villains, and almost by accident at first, it mostly consists of them ending up in the wrong place at the wrong time, and them just trying to do the right thing. We get two character arcs for our main characters this season. The first one is Raph's. His arc is about learning to control his anger. We have Raph see himself in Casey Jones, another angry vigilante. Being able to see from another perspective what harm his anger can do helps him get it under control. Throughout the show, he still comes across as angry, but he seems to have it a little more under control. But it does still get him in trouble. He also has a problem with being reckless and not thinking things through. He himself gets a better understanding of this problem when he meets a little kid just like him. Leo also gets a small arc. Kinda. It's more of the start of an arc that really concludes in Season 4, where Leo is disappointed in himself for not being good enough, but we'll get back to that later. In this season, our main villain is the Shredder. He might be the greatest thing about the show. He's just great to watch and is enjoyable whenever he's on screen. He's also very menacing and really provides a good conflict for the Turtles. The Shredder is also very mysterious. We don't really know that much about him. Throughout the season, we're told that the Shredder has enemies he's fighting against. Enemies that are even more strange and mysterious than himself. The Turtles just sort of get caught in the crossfire, which, as I said before, is a trend throughout the season and most of the show. While their conflict with villains is usually by accident, as the show continues, the Turtles become more and more active on their part. Near the end of the season, they purposely infiltrate the Shredder's building in order to take him down. They know that he's dangerous and feel it's their responsibility to stop him. This, I think, is when the Shredder officially becomes the Turtles' arch-nemesis. The show is probably the closest adaptation to the comics. It's still goofy sometimes, but it definitely has this darker and more serious tone throughout. It helps to really give the feeling that there's risk and danger in the world. Overall, this season is really solid. It does a great job at setting up characters in conflict, some of which won't be resolved until later seasons. Must-see episodes include Things Change, The Shredder Strikes, Part 1 and 2, The Shredder Strikes Back, Part 1 and 2, and Return to New York, Parts 1, 2, and 3. Season 2. Here we're introduced to Karai, and the Shredder is revealed to be an alien. The season starts with guns blazing. At the end of Season 1, the Turtles were transported somewhere unknown. We now find out that they were transported into an alien world. This embarks them on a multi-part space epic. It's full of aliens, sci-fi tech, and lots of Star Wars references. This is great for what it's trying to do, set up sci-fi in this universe. At this point, there weren't really any aliens or alien things in the show, and instead of slowly introducing it, they decided to just dump it all on your lap at once. It's a big risk. If it didn't work, it could have really bombed. But it worked. It also provides a cushion for the reveal that the ooze is alien. And you know what else is alien? The Shredder. I find it fascinating that the Shredder is an alien. It was also a bold move to keep that a secret for the entire first season. The Turtles in Space arc and the Secret Origins arc helped to make this world feel a lot bigger than before. It's also a way to set up a bunch of running plot threads throughout Season 2 and even Season 3. Leatherhead is introduced this season. He makes a nice recurring character for Season 3. We are also introduced to Karai in this season. Karai is the Shredder's daughter. She's a very interesting character, seeing as she has a sense of honor and doesn't like hurting civilians. It makes for interesting conflict, as she constantly has to choose between her honor and her loyalty to the Shredder. This will later be expanded upon in Season 3 and 4. The finale takes us to the Battle Nexus tournament. It's a neat idea. Bring the Turtles to a fighting tournament. Here we get to see more aliens and more beings from different dimensions. It also provides a bit more backstory for Splinter, showing that he wasn't just cooped up in the sewers all the time. Overall, this season is really good. I'd say I like it more than Season 1. It does a good job at expanding upon what was already done, while also setting up things for later development. Must-see episodes include Turtles in Space, Parts 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Secret Origins, Parts 1, 2, and 3. City at War, Parts 1, 2, and 3. Rogue in the House, Part 1 and 2. And The Big Brawl, Parts 1, 2, 3, and 4. Season 3. Here, we are introduced to Agent Bishop. Bishop is a new villain in the series. He's an interesting villain. I think he was introduced mainly to give the Turtles a main Earth-bound villain. At this point, most of the villains were otherworldly, and the Turtles were kinda getting drawn away from their New York roots. The season starts with this huge Triceraton invasion. I love just how big this event feels. We get different perspectives from just about everyone. I really like that the episode takes the time to go and see how the Shredder and Karai are reacting to all this. It's also a brilliant way to set up his new running plot thread. The Shredder is trying to escape Earth once and for all. He uses the leftover alien tech from the Triceratons to build a ship, one that will take him and Karai beyond Earth to conquer other worlds. It's an ingenious idea. It really helps to make the Shredder feel like a big villain. It's also a really good story for the Shredder to finally be defeated in. And the creators were smart, they didn't kill him, just in case they needed him later. We also get to see a new side of the Shredder and his gang this season. We see the new guys in the foot winning Shredder's favor, while his old subordinates are losing his favor. I was actually a little surprised when Hun discovers that Shredder is an Utrom. I just assumed that Hun, his number one guy, knew the truth about who he really was. It seems the Shredder trusted absolutely no one, except for Karai, with the knowledge of who he really was. A lot of the season involves the Turtles dealing with the consequences of the invasion at the start of the season. The Turtles seem to have a lot harder of a time keeping hidden, since many people are now keeping an eye out for strange creatures. In this season, we get a few episodes that take place in different worlds and alternate realities. To be honest, the only one that I found interesting was Same as It Never Was, where we get to see a reality where Donatello just disappears, leading to the downfall of the Turtles and the rise of the Shredder. This is the season where the Utrom Shredder finally gets defeated. It's a satisfying two-parter where the Shredder tries to flee Earth in the spaceship. In a fight against the Shredder, the Turtles find themselves with no way out, and are forced to sacrifice themselves in order to defeat the Shredder. Lucky for them, the Utrons teleport them all to safety just in time. This event will kickstart two characters' major development. It will set Leo on a path of regret and self-doubt. It will also set Karai on a path of revenge. The events that take place also affect a couple of other characters as well. Hun now goes off on a path to become a leader, instead of serving one. He no longer wishes to be a servant of the Shredder. Bishop gets blamed for the damage at Saki's property, and gets his funding snagged. Overall, this season is really good. Some plot threads get resolved while characters have to constantly deal with the consequences of certain events. Must-see episodes include Space Invaders Parts 1, 2, and 3. Worlds Collide Parts 1, 2, and 3. New Blood. The Lesson. Mission of Gravity. Hun on the Run, and Exodus, Part 1 and 2. Season 4. Here we have no Utrom Shredder. Instead, Karai takes on the mantle of the Shredder, and man, is it awesome. I love Karai as the Shredder. Not as much as the Utrom Shredder, but still pretty awesome. I'm kinda disappointed of how little of her we actually get to see as the Shredder in this. She doesn't become the Shredder till almost halfway through the season, and even then she actually doesn't do much. She literally faces off against the Turtles once, and that's when she's revealed herself as the Shredder to them. She wants revenge against the Turtles for having Terrell exiled. Another thing that annoys me is the suit she wears. Now don't get me wrong, I love her Shredder suit. I like that it's obviously the Shredder, just customized for her. It's just that whenever she wears it, she has this annoying habit of taking her helmet off. It's always being taken off, and the suit just doesn't work without the helmet. In this season, we have Leo going through a nice arc. He becomes angry and starts training like crazy. He's haunted by the events of the Season 3 finale. He is disappointed in himself for not being able to save his family. It's a nice arc that really takes its time to build up. We really get a feeling that something is wrong with Leo before we finally find out what it is. What I find odd about this season is after I finished it, I felt like most of it was filler. Whether or not most of it actually was, I can't say for sure. It just really felt like it. Maybe it's the fact that in the whole season there are only 2 multi-parters. which kinda hurts the season, seeing as most of the show's really good stories are multi-parters. After looking over the episodes in this season, most of the first half comes off as skippable, which is disappointing, seeing as I've found that most episodes of the previous seasons find ways to make themselves must-watches. Now, that isn't to say that there isn't any good in this season. On the contrary, there's actually quite a lot to like. In the episode Insane in the Membrane, we get a lot of awesome development for Baxter Stockman, who wasn't all that interesting prior, but I'll talk more about him later. What's also nice is that we see the villain, Hun, start to take on a more antagonistic role. He stopped just being the muscle for another bad guy, and now has become a major threat all his own, but just like Karai, he doesn't really get to do much. Speaking of these two characters, I'd like to point out that I love how the Tengu Shredder just casts an enormous shadow over the show. Karai and Hun's characters have changed as a result of the Shredder's influence, and because of the events at the end of Season 3. He's still affecting all these things even though he's not even there anymore. We get a cool cameo from him in Bad Day in the form of a quote-unquote dream. The villain that does get a lot to do is Bishop. We get to see Bishop go through problems of his own, most completely unrelated to the Turtles, which is kinda interesting. He has to deal with the repercussions of the Season 3 finale as well, getting funding cut from his group. We also see him get tricked by the Foot Mystics, showing his ability to make bad decisions on poor judgment. The final episode leaves off on a cliffhanger, to be continued next season, in the first, of many, format changes. Overall, this season was okay. The season feels lopsided, with most of the good and worth watching episodes in the second half. There's also a lot of filler, and most of the villains just don't get that much to do. I think it's probably the least good season so far. Emphasis on good. Despite its faults, it's still pretty good overall. Must-see episodes include Bad Day, The Ancient One, Scion of the Shredder, Prodigal Son, Insane in the Membrane, Tale of Master Yoshi, and Good Genes, Part 1 and 2. Season 5. Here we meet the Tengu Shredder. I'm just gonna say it. I'm not a huge fan of this season. The first thing that kinda loses me is that the whole season takes a big deviation from sci-fi, and even a little bit of a deviation from the whole ninja aspect. The show delves more into the more mystic and magical side of the show, which I guess is fine if you're a fan of that. I'm just not. And the Turtles sorta get superpowers, which I don't like. As I said, it kinda takes away from the ninja aspect. Then there's the whole Tengu Shredder thing. I could see where they were going with the whole original Shredder thing, but it really rubs me the wrong way when the Shredder we've grown to love as a villain is now being called a fraud and a fake. It sort of feels like they were forced to bring the Shredder back, but didn't want to dig up the Utrom Shredder again. They tried to make it interesting, but kinda screwed over the fans of the Utrom Shredder. And the Tengu Shredder isn't even all that interesting in the first place. It's sort of become the Boba Fett problem. He's awesome and the fans love him, but then he's put everywhere, and it kinda takes away from the cool factor. I would have been much happier if we just had the Karai Shredder as a central villain for the season. What's odd about this season is that there's only 12 episodes, less than half of each previous season. Because of this, there are very little filler episodes, dedicating a lot more time to progressing the story, which I like. The show goes for a different format here, having the Turtles spend the first half of the season in Japan training for the Tengu Shredder's return. This could have been interesting, except it wasn't. We get 4 new characters that the Turtles train with, and even though we were with them for a number of episodes, I can't describe any of them for you. They're just so forgettable. And while they're in Japan, they don't really go or do anything interesting. I think that's enough of the bad stuff. Now onto the good stuff. We get more of Splinter and his relationship with the Turtles. We really get a sense that he's their father, and that he really worries about them. By the end of the season, he feels less like some mysterious wise man, and more like a developed character. The finale is also really great. We get to see the Turtles team up with all their major villains in order to defeat the Tengu Shredder. It's awesome. By the end of the season, Karai becomes an ally again. Sort of. It kinda gets confusing later on. More on that some other time. Overall, I think this season can be categorized as meh. If you're into the magic and mystic side of the series, you might like it well enough. For me, it was all plot and no character. Most of our favorite characters don't do much for most of the season, and the new characters leave no impression. Must-see episodes include Legend of the Five Dragons, New World Order Part 1 and 2, Fathers and Sons, Enter the Dragons, Part 1 and 2. Season 6. Here, the Turtles are transported to the future. Here we have the show's second format change. The whole season takes place in the year 2105, and it was called Fast Forward. There was also a character redesign for everyone. I really liked the redesign. As for the future setting, at first I really wasn't a fan, but the setting did grow on me as the season progressed. There seems to be the theme of redemption throughout the season. We get to see Bishop once again, but of course, 100 years in the future. The thing is, he's changed a lot. Bishop has changed his ways, and now, as president of the Pan-Galactic Alliance, he's all about peace with aliens, not trying to destroy or dissect them. This is a great arc for this character, and it makes sense. All Bishop ever wanted to do was protect the Earth. He just had the wrong idea about how to go about doing so. Baxter Stockman also shows up once again. He survived as a brain and an eye for 100 years. He wants revenge on Bishop, who he thinks left him to die when their lab was destroyed in an accident. Stockman has a change of heart, or brain, when Leo tells him that what makes someone a monster isn't what they look like, but what they do. It's another great character arc that makes sense. We could see the good person inside Stockman, refer back to Insane in the Membrane. He was just a guy who had a lot of bad luck and was sent down the wrong path. There's a great feeling that comes with seeing two villains redeem themselves and become the good people they were always meant to be. We're introduced to these evil clones of the Turtles that seem just plain bad. But after spending some time with the Turtles, the Leo clone comes to have a change in mindset. He starts sharing with his brothers and keeps the gift that the Turtles gave him. I suspect they always meant to take this further, but never got to. They had planned on having at least one more season take place in the future, but that was cut short. What's interesting in this season is that since the planet is now full of all kinds of odd aliens, the Turtles are free to walk the streets in daylight. This helps to contribute to Stockman's arc, and Leo states that because of Bishop, people no longer judge them purely based on how they look. As for the new characters that have joined the cast, I think they're fine. I don't dislike any of them, and unlike the new characters from Season 5, they actually leave an impression this time. This is the first season to have no multi-parters. Apparently, they were going for a more standalone type of season, which is disappointing, seeing as long story arcs and multi-part episodes are the show's strongest suit. Mikey gets a bit of a character arc this season, one that really makes sense. He learns about responsibility and humility. Mikey's always been the lazy goofball, and now it's finally coming back to haunt him. He's so behind on his training that his brother's graduating to Chunin without him. It's only after a series of tests that he finally realizes that he's been holding himself back. It's hard to tell how well this message sinks in, since after this episode he mostly just goes back into his role as the goofball. Sadly, most episodes in this season come off as skippable in hindsight. Most don't really have any significance in the context of events. Some episodes really take advantage of the future aspect. We get a really cool cameo by the Mutant Shredder, when Leo and Cody accidentally travel back in time to The Shredder Strikes Back Part 2. The finale of the season is a pretty big letdown. It pretty much just ends in filler. Overall, I don't think this season is as bad as some people say it is. I'd put it as the weakest in quality so far, but not all that bad. Must-see episodes include Graduation Day, Class of 2105, Timing is Everything, Turtle Extinction, Head of State, and DNA is Thicker Than Water. Season 7. Here, the Turtles return to their own time and meet the Cyber Shredder. We've reached our third and final format change. This season is weird. This season was called Back to the Sewers. The first really odd thing you'll notice is the second change in character design. I actually really like it for the most part. There's just one problem with it. For some reason, they decided it would be best to show the Turtles' eyes in their masks. It's really distracting. So like I stated before, the Turtles are back to the present. The season starts with them fixing the time portal and going through when Viral, a villain from Fast Forward, takes control of Sterling and sabotages them. She sends them to different periods in time to try and kill them. The last time she tries to kill them, she sends them to the very near future. And what we see is just pure awesomeness. We see the Mutant Shredder and the Tengu Shredder in the middle of a giant battlefield fighting one another. Their fight is interrupted by a new Shredder, which will later be known as the Cyber Shredder. This scene alone makes me okay with the whole multiple Shredders thing that they were going for in Season 5. I can actually dig it now. The reason I didn't like it before was probably because it felt too disjointed. Having them all in the same scene and fighting each other gives me a picture of what they were trying to do in the first place. It's so awesome. Which leads to disappointment, and this is never ever mentioned again. What the heck? This is easily the weakest season in the whole show. The season has only 13 episodes, and yet again, there are no multi-parters. And that's not to say there aren't any good things. It took 7 seasons, but we finally get a Donatello character arc. Splinter gets split into hundreds of digital parts and scattered throughout cyberspace. Don, the one who always thinks things through and always perfectly calculates everything, blames himself for what happened. He feels he got sloppy and made a mistake. His brothers help him realize that blaming himself and obsessing over this is not good for them, or for anyone. He learns to live in the present. This is a nice arc that takes its time to get settled in. I think the major problem with this season is its villain. The Cyber Shredder himself is fine. It's just that there's a lot of build-up to his escape from cyberspace, but when the Turtles face him, he's defeated rather easily. Even when he comes back a second time, he's defeated easily yet again. I think what could have really solved this problem was multi-parters. They allow a lot of build-up and longer battles. That's why the epicness of the Utrom and Tengu Shredder battles worked so well. What's odd about the last battle with the Cyber Shredder is that Karai is there, but she literally has no lines. She was a key part in creating the Cyber Shredder. She doesn't even get a line? WTF. The whole season itself just feels weird. It feels like we're in a completely different world, and I can't quite be sure why. There's also the addition of traveling inside cyberspace. This aspect just feels so out of place. Feels like something that belongs in a different show altogether. If you get a chance, check back in on Hun and Baxter Stockman. It's kind of odd seeing Stockman, since we already know how his arc will end. Hun is still the leader of the Purple Dragons, and when he hears that Shredder is coming back, he prepares to fight him off. It doesn't go well. What's really confusing is that Karai is no longer leading the Foot, which I guess I can understand after the events of Season 5. But now the Foot's being run by some guy named Khan. Who is this guy? Where did he come from? Why is he leading the Foot? None of these questions are answered. Plus, the guy is as bland as a brick. Overall, this season is actually pretty poor in quality. It has its moments, but they're few and far between. I only recommend this season to the most hardcore of Turtle fans, who just have to watch all the episodes. Must-see episodes include Tempest Fugit, Something Wicked, Hacking Stockman, Web Wranglers, Super Quest, City Under Siege, and Wedding Bells and Bites. From best to worst, I'd rate each season as follows: Season 3, Season 2, Season 1, Season 4, Season 5, Season 6, Season 7. Now, let's take a look at the characters. Michelangelo, the wisecracking, nunchuck-wielding turtle. Mikey is, for the most part, the comic relief. He's the one who shouts puns and surfer lingo. But that doesn't mean he can't be serious. When the story calls for it, Mikey can and will get serious. He's a goof-off, but learns that he needs to be responsible. He goes through an arc of humility in Season 6, which I kind of feel was long overdue, especially looking back on how annoying he was in the big brawl, and his non-stop bragging about winning twice. He seems to really enjoy annoying Raph. Raphael, the angry, sigh-stabbing turtle. Raph is the kind of guy to fight first, ask questions later, and he can be easily agitated. He kinda learns to control his anger in Season 1, when he sees Casey acting the same way as him and tries to calm him down. Donatello, my personal favorite turtle. The super genius, bow-staff swinging turtle. Donnie is the turtle's window into the tech side of their lives. He makes all the gear, vehicles, and helps translating the sci-fi stuff they run into. He doesn't get an arc until Season 7, where he learns to live in the moment and not beat himself up about the past. Leonardo, the serious leader that slices his enemies with his katana blades. Leo is the leader and takes everything seriously. He goes through an arc in Season 4 where he learns that he can't blame himself for not being able to control everything. He gives all that he's got and he can't give any more. It's a really well done arc that kinda starts in Season 1, when Leo can't stop the Shredder's elite guard. Leo and Raph tend to butt heads a lot, given Raph's tendency to not want to listen to anyone. It's a rivalry that seems to die down as the show goes on. Splinter, the father/sensei of the Turtles. This version of Splinter is okay. He's wise while still having faults. He actually has a lot of funny moments too, whether it's him not understanding a cell phone or him watching his soap operas. He usually stands as the voice of reason for the young Turtles. He almost always has some kind of presence in the show. Even in Season 7, when he's lost in cyberspace for most of the season, you can still feel his presence as the Turtles try their best to rescue him. He may be the Turtles' teacher, but that doesn't mean he can't learn from them too. Over the course of the show, he learns to trust them more and stops being so protective. It's something I believe most parents probably can relate to. Something strange about Splinter is that he never tells his sons anything. Throughout the show, we find out he's been keeping so many secrets from them, it's insane. The secret of their origin, the identity of the Mutant Shredder, the Battle Nexus tournament, the identity of the Tengu Shredder, and you get the point. I find it odd that none of the Turtles seem to have any problems with the absurd amount of secrets Splinter keeps from them. April O'Neil, the ex-employee of Baxter Stockman, who becomes the first human to befriend the Turtles. I like this version of April well enough. Here she starts off as a scientist instead of a reporter, just like her comic book counterpart. There's definitely a nice progression from her first episodes. A nice running plot thread of hers is her training with Splinter. They don't draw a lot of attention to this. She just gets better and better at fighting as time moves on. Casey Jones, a New Yorker with a habit of dressing in hockey masks to beat up criminals. This is not my favorite version of this character. Here, he's sort of a bumbling idiot with a heart of gold. There isn't much to him since he pretty much goes through his character arc in this first episode. He has an interesting past that actually crosses with the Turtles, although none of them actually know this. Cody Jones, the descendant of April and Casey. Cody is the reason the Turtles end up stranded in 2105, and does his best to try and get them back. Cody is the owner of O'Neil Tech, a really high-tech and powerful company. He's a kid with a lot of weight on his shoulders, but this doesn't really get explored a lot. It could have been interesting seeing this young kid have to deal with this huge amount of responsibility. Besides that, there really isn't that much to this character. Leatherhead, the mutated alligator friend of the Turtles. Leatherhead shares the intellectual fascination with Don, and soon becomes a great ally to them. Leatherhead faces a real dilemma. He has these angry and animalistic tendencies that can hurt others. He thinks himself a monster. The problem is solved when the Turtles find him a home of his own, where he can learn to get himself under control in peace. He's a nice character with an interesting balance of intellect and animalistic nature. Professor Honeycutt, aka the Fugitoid, a scientist from an alien planet that was transferred into the body of a robot. A charming side character. You can't help but admire how noble this character is. He absolutely refuses to let his portal device fall into the wrong hands. He goes through so much, running across the galaxy, and even having his friends hurt, but he just won't do it. The character is also very smart. He saves a copy of himself before he sacrifices himself to stop the invasion of Earth. He's a really nice character. Serling, the robot butler that raised Cody. At first, Serling sort of seems like he only exists to be annoyed by the Turtles, which would seem mean, if it were for the fact that he's kind of a dick. As Season 6 progresses, he becomes more and more likable. He really cares about Cody, and would fight off supervillains to protect him, which is a very admirable trait to have. We sort of get an underlying feeling of respect for him, although in Season 7 he does kind of revert back to the former role he played. Starly, the genius employee of Cody Jones at O'Neil Tech. She's a cute character, although doesn't actually get to do much. There's sort of this subplot romance between her and Cody, which I'm sure would have gotten resolved if Fast Forward had gotten its second season. She's quite a lovable character, with nothing really to dislike. There is an episode where we learn that she loves Earth while her parents don't. This is a conundrum that really helps make her relatable to the audience, although it isn't really explored much. The Ancient One, the sensei of Master Yoshi. This character starts off as the sort of Yoda of the show. You see this short, fat guy that's always farting, and you don't expect him to be this great warrior. Although, after his reveal as the Ancient One, he just sort of falls into the wise master role, although unlike Splinter, there's a lot more comedy done with him. Miyamoto, the rabbit samurai friend of the Turtles. He especially resonates with Leo due to their strong sense of honor. They instantly make a bond when they first meet. Beyond that though, there really isn't that much to this character. He's actually a little boring. Now let's take a look at the villains. The Mutant Shredder, an alien criminal who was stranded on Earth looking for revenge. My absolute favorite villain/character of the whole show. He's not a very complex character, but to say he's completely one-dimensional is incorrect. I especially like his relationship with Karai. It's easy to say that the Shredder is just an evil person. That doesn't seem completely true. It's true, he doesn't give a damn about anybody, but it seems that Karai is the exception. He seems to express a real affection towards her, taking her in and raising her as his own, and unlike with his other subordinates, he doesn't punish Karai when she fails a mission. With Hun, his #1 assistant, he sometimes threatens to kill him if he fails. He also doesn't tell anyone that he's an Utrom, except for Karai. I really wish their relationship was explored more. I find the Shredder very menacing. Even as a little Utrom I find him menacing. I think it's the voice. I actually find the Utrom Shredder more threatening than the Tengu Shredder. The Tengu Shredder is powerful and all, but he gets destroyed 10 episodes after he's introduced. The Utrom Shredder, it just keeps coming back over and over and over again. This dude just won't stay dead. I really like the fact that he's an alien in this. For some it might be too big a deviation from the usual Shredder, but not for me. I find it fascinating that the Shredder, this evil force of nature, is actually a small squid-like alien in a suit. Any big guy can act big, but it takes a certain kind of character to be a little guy that acts big. He's also constantly surrounded by this strange mystery. He comes from a peace-loving race, so what happened to him? And why does he look so much different from the others of his species? He's red and has these menacing spikes on his head. He also has this strange scar over his left eye. And the thing is, we're never told anything. We never get to know the answer to any of those questions. It will always remain a mystery. Baxter Stockman, a brilliant scientist who has a habit of working for evil people. I originally cared little for this character, but as the show continued, I started to like him more and more. I think the reason behind that is because the character goes through an arc that isn't really highlighted until season 4. He's actually a really complicated character. After watching Insane in the Membrane, an episode in season 4, the character suddenly has a very sad tragedy to him. It's actually pretty dark for a kid's cartoon. Seeing this man literally fall apart as the show goes on, to the point where he kind of gives up on a normal life. Hun, the Shredder's #1 guy, and the leader of the Purple Dragons. Hun starts off as the stereotypical muscle character, but as the show progresses, he changes very much. From seasons 1 to 3, he is very much devoted to the Shredder, and wants to please him as much as he can. He even gets jealous of Karai when she shows up and steals the spotlight away from Hun. At the same time, he started failing his missions, something he doesn't seem to have had to deal with before. Eventually, when the Utrom Shredder leaves Earth for good, he starts taking on the leader position himself, kind of trying to emulate the Shredder, even going as far as having his goons call him Master. He becomes antagonistic towards the Shredder, and eventually becomes enemies with the Cyber Shredder. Karai, the adopted daughter of the Shredder, who actually takes on the mantle of the Shredder in season 4. I really like Karai, and I especially love her as the Shredder in season 4. I really wish we got more of that. She's really interesting because even though she's completely dedicated to the Shredder, her ideals don't mesh well with the Shredder's. She values honor and the safety of the innocent, while the Shredder doesn't. This becomes an issue in a lot of situations, especially when she's given orders to do things like kill the turtles. A lot of times she'll go behind his back to make sure innocents don't get killed, but she does so while still furthering the Shredder's plans, and sort of playing both sides. At first, the turtles, especially Lil, knew at some point she would have to pick a side. Her ideals, or the Shredder. They just weren't sure which it would be. The Shredder raised her after all, and she seems to feel like she owes him everything for giving her a life. It isn't until the turtles assist in the Shredder's final defeat that she seems to have finally chosen a side. Or so it seems. She completely puts aside her ideals and honor to try and destroy the turtles for good. That is, till the end of season 5, where the Tengu Shredder basically wants to turn the Earth into hell. She finally seems to find her sense of honor once again, and helps the turtles defeat the Tengu Shredder. Agent Bishop, leader of an organization devoted to defending the Earth from aliens. Something interesting about this character is that we really don't know all that much about him. We only really get bits and pieces of his backstory over the course of the show. The character actually goes through somewhat of a character arc. We learn in season 6 that Bishop decided that the only way to protect the Earth from aliens is to become allies with them. In season 6, he even seems to think of the turtles as his friends. Well, at least in his memory. So it's really nice to get a character arc out of him, even if it is off-screen. The Tengu Shredder. I'm not a huge fan of this character. Not necessarily because he's a bad character or anything, it mostly has to do with what he represents. While the Utrom Shredder is only slightly complex, Tengu Shredder is completely one-dimensional. His character can be summed up in one word: evil. Which I guess is kind of the point, but that still doesn't make him an interesting character. Also, I have a question. Why does he have the same voice as the Utrom Shredder? He has the same face because Shrell designed the suit to look like him, but he has the same voice too. Why? Darius Dunn, the evil uncle of Cody Jones. This character is evil, but in a way we've never seen before. He manipulates people, especially Cody, which is interesting because we've never seen a villain act this way towards a child, his nephew too. Even the Shredder, who was pretty dang evil, never treated Karai this way. Darius goes to hate Cody, and even Splinter has to say he's never seen anyone with such hatred towards a child. I'm not sure where this character is going, and since we never get to see it, all we can do is speculate. Shokunabo, an evil alien who wants to infect the world with goop. There isn't much to this character. He's just sort of evil and a little incompetent. He's really just a device to create conflict. He didn't leave much of an impact on me. Khan, the subordinate of the Cyber Shredder. This character is so boring it's crazy. I can barely remember a thing about him. That's how little of an impact he had on me. I really just don't care about him at all. He's obviously just the Hun replacement, except not menacing and not nearly as interesting. The Cyber Shredder, the digital copy of the Utrom Shredder. I like this Shredder more than the Tengu Shredder, but not nearly as much as the Utrom Shredder. Even though this character is literally a copy of the Utrom Shredder, I still find him interesting in a different way. He feels like a different character. I think this is mostly due to the fact that he's a digital person. He doesn't wear a mask, the mask is literally his face. He's unique because he can attack the turtles in a completely different way. He can control cybernetics and such. It feels like a relentless computer virus that needs to be erased. I haven't read much of the original Mirage comics. Well, from what I hear, this is the closest adaptation to it there is. If that's the case, then I hope to be reading more of the comics soon. Looking at the entire show overall, I really like it. It's funny, it's action-packed, and it throws some interesting twists and turns your way. I'm glad I took the time to watch the entire thing though. Most of the characters are thoroughly enjoyable, and there are some really good stories within the series. If you're a Turtles fan, especially of the comics or the 90s movie, I highly suggest this series. I must warn you though, that the series might lose you at Season 6.
Catch you on the flip side.